essentially, yeah. So the police officer says, "Do you mean these particular women, or women in general?" And Paul just replies, "In general." So he just hates women in general.
Okay.
It seemed that the only woman who he'd ever really had a bond with was Sharon, the one he was living with. He says that Sharon was not like anyone else he knew, that he would never hurt her, and that she was a kindred spirit of his. By the way, just lets you know, Sharon had no idea all this bullshit was going on. She's completely innocent in this story. She was oblivious to it. Like I said, she was working 2 fucking jobs. He was doing this when she was out. He was cleaning up and shit. So, let's not hate on Sharon. The interesting part of this, so the court, he obviously gets sent down. They try and fight it, saying that he had a hard upbringing and that he had sort of habitual unemployment. But
if that even got anywhere, that's fucking bullshit.
Yeah, he also tries to say that his brother had sexually abused him at one point, which has later been found to be complete utter bullshit.
Really?
Yeah. But the judge was having none of it. The judge was like, look, there have been plenty of people who have grown up with very similar circumstances to that, and not all of them go out fucking being fucking monster murderers. So no excuse. You're not getting any sympathy from me. Sorry. The Justice Vincent, who was the actual the court guy there, said the apprehension you have caused to thousands of women in the community will be felt for a long time. For many, you are the fear that quickens their step as they walk home, or causes a parent to look anxiously at the clock when their child is late. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment. He's 3 consecutive life imprisonment sentences.
Good.
So obviously no chance of getting out, one would hope. They also initially sentenced him to no possible parole as well, which is good. But Paul did appeal towards the case. And he was granted a 30-year non-parole period. Which means in 2023, Paul Denyer will be up for parole.
How did he judge parole? Is it just solely by inside the prison, how he's been acting inside?
There's a few things that go into that, yeah. So it depends on the severity of their initial case. I believe is some of it will be to do with good behaviour inside. Some of it will also be to do with if there's any sort of public outcry from it as well, or if they believe that he has reformed or anything. He'll go through like psychological assessments and things, and they'll see if he's a danger to anyone on the outside. But what they also estimate is if anyone else is a danger to him, which I never really get. But they've got to be seen to be protecting the prisoner as well, which is always crazy. It's always crazy. It's like, if they think his life may be in danger when he gets out, that's also an issue for them. But this is the thing, okay, and this is what so you're probably wondering why we featured this particular story in an LGBTQ plus podcast, right?
Yep.
Well, the thing is that Paul is Paula. So Paul is actually transgender.
Oh.
Now, not had the sort of transgender surgery, gender reconstruction surgery, but here's a photo of her. By the way, I wasn't being really disrespectful before. I mean, I'm sure people probably don't care about respect for this particular person, but I was calling her him and things and using the particular male pronoun, but that's because that's what he was at that time.
Yeah.
At the time, she identified as male. So I wasn't being disrespectful or anything, but like I say, I'm sure people probably don't care too much about me tiptoeing around this particular person, but don't worry about it. But yeah, that's Paula as she is now. And what is interesting to me, and what I thought might be what interested me with this, and the question that I want to leave to the listeners as well, is the fact that this is a person who possibly had been struggling with gender identity for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah.
Clearly, there were a lot of other fucking things going on in the mix there as well. Clearly. And this hatred towards women seems very, very peculiar to me. But also, there's definitely some sort of link there, right? Right?
Not definitely. We're not psychologists.
No, I know, but this is the question. This is what I like is having these conversations.
I know
about
where you're coming from with it. I think you are right, but we can't say either way.
No,
in all honesty, but like I said, I think you are right. I think it's like an internal battle.
I think it's very interesting that a person who would go to such horrific extremes to show hatred towards women in such a violent way would then themselves identify as a woman, which is very...
It could be along the lines of like, he hates women because he isn't one himself.
That could be I mean, in one of the things as well, I missed it out before, but he says he lifts up one of the victim's shirts just to see how big her breasts were, but there was nothing sexual about it. So it's more of like an interest thing, isn't it? It's very very strange, but it's very interesting for me as well. So I'll like a psychologist, I don't know of any of the people who listen to us. They're probably not psychologists, to be honest. People who listen to us, I don't think we're on that high of a brow to be hitting people who are psychologists. But yeah, I put the question over to you. Like, what do you think? There's anything in this? I mean, obviously, the one thing that I want to make it straight as well, and we had this conversation outside of the podcast maybe a few days ago, where I was saying to you that, I find it difficult I sometimes to discuss, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, all these sort of things, because a lot of times we're talking about like gay men who are killed or transgender people who are killed, and what I don't definitely want to do is paint the picture that we are trying to somehow make people think that the LGBT community is full of killers and murderers.
Maybe paint them all with the same brush.
Yeah, because we're part of that community as well, and it's completely not our intention to do that, but because we are within that sort of community, I feel it's quite interesting sometimes to try and see like how people within that community sort of deal with certain things on the very rare occasion. I mean, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender serial killers, very small percentage in terms when compared to sort of heterosexual cis male people. So yeah, we are not the bad guys out there necessarily. Yeah, I just think it's very, very interesting sort of feel to... I'm doing like a Jeff Goldblum.
I was literally going to say Jeff Goldblum.
I'm like doing some very sort of hand movements. So, yeah, it's very
Here's the way you said it as well.
It's going to feel. Yeah. Well, that's that. I think it's interesting. Final question. Final question. So Paula would like to have gender reconstruction surgery. Of course. But
how is it funded?
It would be funded via the taxpayers of Australia. Now, this is a difficult one for me, and I tossed and turned between this in my head. I was like, oh fuck, because there's the super crazy liberal side of me who's like
saying yeah,
because if for example someone was sick in hospital and they didn't feel well, you make them better, right? It's the obligation and the duty of the prison to make them better. So if this person is having sort of, if there's a transgender person in a prison and they're having such sort of turmoil and they're struggling and they're going through all those horrible struggles that transgender people obviously would go through, isn't it then their duty to sort of help that just as they would help anybody else out there? Or, and this is the other side of me, which then says, or do you sort of veto those rights and veto those sort of things as soon as you stick your fucking fingers in someone's throat and rip out the vocal cords?
It is a difficult one. For the reasons being, is you see it all the time all over the news that like Charles Manson and stuff like that. He was in hospital.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Being
so he was in hospital.
yeah.
He was getting looked after. So it's a really difficult one, I think.
It's a tough one. And also, she's in a male prison as well at the moment. It's kind of like, it's difficult because it's kind of like, it's Chelsea Manning is the person. Chelsea Manning.
Okay.
And she was in the army, and she was like a whistleblower for the army and things. And she got put into a male prison. And that was wrong to me because, first off, her crimes, nothing at all like this, in my opinion. Nothing at all like this. And with Chelsea Manning, you put them in a male prison. There's going to be an issue there. There's definitely going to be an issue. But what happens with this, where someone transitions whilst in the actual hospital, whilst in the actual male's prison? Do you then sort of ship them out to the female? It's really weird, really difficult.
To be fair, I don't want to give it an answer in all honesty because I don't know. Either way, I think it's going to be wrong. What I will say.
No, you cannot have confidence in your own opinion. I mean, for me, I think it is. It wouldn't be up to one person. I mean, to be honest, if it's the taxpayers who are funding it, maybe it would need to go to a public sort of a public vote or something like that. Maybe.
But that's what I'm thinking. You don't go to a public vote for, like, I'll bring up Charles Manson again. You didn't bring up a public vote for him to go into hospital to get better, even though he died.
And again, this is the opposite side of the liberal side of me speaking now, is, some people would potentially argue that with someone like Charles Manson, yes, you do have an obligation to make sure that they don't die, but do you have the obligation to make sure that they have a comfortable life whilst in jail? Because this is something that, she's not going to die from this. There's no sort of disease or anything that's affecting her, but it would definitely help with mental health and making the life a lot more livable inside.
To be fair, as well, it could also reform her.
Well, I don't fucking know. It could. It could help, but I think this person's far beyond that anyway. Necessarily, I think once you've, like I said, once you stuck your fingers in someone's fucking throat, I think you should be put away for good.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, and let's leave those questions there then. Let us leave those questions there. Again, this was a bit of a strange episode because it was sort of shaped very strange. The topic was a bit strange, but I literally want to do these ones just so we could sort of ask those questions, really, so we could have a bit of a conversation around that.
It's still part of the LGBT.
It is. But at first, like I said, first it doesn't seem like it is. But then it is. Okay, so let's go through this. First off, obviously, 100% condolences to the victims and also their families, and also to fucking Paula's siblings as well, because I mentioned earlier that she put them through hell with those sort of sexual abuse allegations, and it wasn't until a little bit later on when she herself actually wrote a letter saying it was all bullshit, that it was actually done. I mean, the guy had to move to the UK to get away from all the fucking shit. Yeah. So victims all round, you shouldn't have to put up with a fucking asshole like this. Secondly, heroes. I think the police department in this particular one did an amazing job, right?
Yep. Also the survivor as well. The
survivor, Mrs. Toth, she was amazing at getting away. But definitely in terms of a hero, someone who helped Crackett, who helped, this person sounds like someone who would have gone on to kill a lot more and was intending on killing a lot more, and these crimes were getting a lot more grisly and a lot more gruesome, so I'm sure this would have been a very more violent and horrific story than it already was if the police hadn't been so quick. So the heroes, well done to the police department of the Frankston Police Department. Very good job to you all. And lastly, we want to say to Paula Denya, a gigantic, a huge, a grand, big fuck you, Paula.
You look so happy with yourself then.